Good morning. My name is Vivian Gordon. I use she, her pronouns. And this is a prayer of reconciliation called To Wake, to Rise by Ann Baker. We gather with a hunger for reconciliation. What is done cannot be undone. What is done next must now be done with care. We gather because we are hopeful, because we have visions and dreams of a brighter future, that there may be more than vision in this room. These are the wounds we must heal together. Grief and anger for all that has been lost, guilt or fear in the living, pain that has gone without sufficient comfort, mistrust that was earned that continues burning still. Every injury we may have named, yet still carry. Those we haven't, can't, or dare not speak aloud. Those we are not ready to make public. Those still not recognized, accepted, understood. These are the wounds that seek replacement, not cancellation or denial. Wounds we will tend cautiously, applying the salve of understanding, forming scars that mark our history, without disfiguring the future we must share. This is not a time for quick solutions, fancy talking. This is a slow precision. This is a prayer for peace. We are now at this endeavor, new at listening, new at hearing, new at taking enough time to honestly receive one another's stories. What is done cannot be undone. What is done next must now be done with care. We gather because we are hopeful, because we have visions and dreams of a brighter future. May the strength of this time together help us to walk forward. May the wisdom of this experience help us to know our path. May we have the courage to return as often as necessary until our way is clear. May we have the perseverance together to see it through. May we cause it to be so. Come, let us worship.
Wherever you are.
Today, I would like to talk about the denial of racism in our society. I have a few personal memories of racism from my own life. When I was a little girl, we grew up speaking mostly Spanish. My mom's Mexican. So I remember one day we were leaving the Catholic Church, and my sisters and my mom and I were whispering quietly in Spanish, and a woman pointed to us very angrily and said, "Speak English. This is America." And it just, I was a little girl, and I just had never been treated that way, so it was really a horrible feeling. And then another time, I was going to a formal dance in high school, and it was one of those things where the girls have to ask the guys to the dance. So I asked the guy next to me at the locker, and, we went to the dance, and everything was fine. And then later on, my mother said to me, "Vivian, why didn't you tell me that the Andre was African American?" And honestly, it didn't occur to me to say anything because, she's Mexican. So I was like, we're minorities, but she was kind of weird. It was very strange. And then after college, I moved to New York City. And one night I was out with a girlfriend, and we had to go back to her office. It was late at night. It was dark. There weren't people in the building. And we went up to her office, and when we got done with getting what she needed, we pushed the elevator door, button to go in the elevator. And as the doors opened, there were two young African-American guys already in the elevator. And I remember just kind of getting in and sort of clutching my purse a little tighter and just thinking like, God, this is creepy that I feel this way. That's just awful. So that's just a few incidents. I'm sure that it might be nice for you to think about some incidents in your past that occurred that, made you feel uncomfortable or something. So I recently found a good website called emancipator.org. And in it, Philippe Copeland states that there are 8 different strategies that racism deniers use. The first one is refuting. This is when someone denies that racism is a problem. And they often follow this by dismissing whatever evidence is provided. They'll say things like, "Oh, racism is no longer a problem. There's no racism in this country." Minimizing occurs when someone makes racism appear to be less of a problem than it is. They might tell you, "Oh, you're just exaggerating that situation. That's not the way it happened." Myopia is an unwillingness to perceive racism accurately or to offer alternate explanations for the outcome that doesn't involve racism. Like someone might say, "Oh, I don't see color or race." Replacing shifts the focus from racism to something else. Defending dodges accountability for racism. So they might say like, "Oh gosh, I'm not racist. I have lots of African American friends or lots of minority friends." Excusing avoids accountability, often blaming people for their experiences of racism. Or they might say something like, "Oh, it's just a joke. I was just joking around." Revising history misrepresents the past, like saying things like, "Oh, some racists are good people," or "they were people of the time. That's the way they thought at that time, so it's okay." Distorting occurs when someone claims that white people are the real victims. On the website, Philippe also gives some good suggestions on how to dispute some of these arguments to help people, get more knowledge and be aware of their thoughts and actions. This involves educating, giving people more information, sticking to data and facts, and it's important to acknowledge that while white people are also suffering, that's not because of minorities. It's because of manipulation and an abuse by the wealthy. And I'd like to close with a quote from Ibram X. Kendi. He's a historian and an author. "Denial is the heartbeat of racism, beating across ideologies, races, and nations. It is beating within us." Thank you.
In September of 2024, I fainted and fell and hit my head. And after that, I began having spells of vertigo and dizziness about every other month, and sometimes it would last a week or even 10 days at a time. I had like post-concussion syndrome or something like that. Vertigo is terrible. If you've ever experienced it, it's terrible. When I'm having a spell of it, it's most intense when I'm laying down or turn my head from side to side or up or down for more than I'm comfortable doing. When it's really bad, the room spins violently out of control. Now, it only lasts 10 or 15, maybe 20 seconds at the most, but it is terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying and disoriented, and I usually scream and then reach out for anything that I can grab onto to make me feel like I'm not gonna just spin off the face of the earth. Your instinct when that's happening is to shut your eyes, to block out the spinning. That doesn't work, then you're just spinning in the dark. When I'm upright, the spinning eases, but it's replaced by a constant unease, kind of like a seasickness, if you will, more than the violent spinning. Anyway, I learned how to manage the feeling when I'm up and about doing it by simply not looking up or down or side to side for too long. Instead, I turn my whole body, and don't move my head. In other words, I'm trying not to take in more than I can handle, right, during those times. I can't change my perspective because it's going to disrupt me. I don't want to let competing viewpoints demand integration, because what's not working for my brain at that moment is any integration of multiple viewpoints. Now, the reason that this happens, of course, my doctor explains, is that our brains are constantly doing that work of integrating viewpoints, right? Each eye sees a slightly different picture, right? You maybe have done the camera one, camera two, right? You close one eye, then close the other, and when you look, you're going to get a slightly different perspective. Right, Frank? Doing it at me right now? Camera one, camera two. We're shifting. Our brains do the work of integrating those pictures together into one picture, constantly, all the time. But after my concussion, my brain didn't want to do that work anymore because it was working on healing, so that was the thing that it set aside. Well, we're going to set this aside while we're working on healing the concussion, and you're going to have to figure out camera one and camera two on your own. Given the news of this last week, the murder of Renee Nicole Good in Minneapolis by ICE, the continued escalation of ICE activity there and across the country, and the intimidation and fear that's spreading through the immigrant communities. We also can't forget the open threats by the United States to colonize Venezuela and Greenland. And I think you all should get comfortable with that word, because that's what it is. It's colonization. Given that sense of things that we're looking at, given the sense of fear or helplessness, anger, grief, or disbelief, how many of you can relate to that little metaphor of spinning and feeling like you're not quite sure what to look at right now, right? That's what it feels like all the time. The news is very disorienting. Now, it doesn't matter that we expected some of these things to happen. We knew it was coming. Foreknowledge does not soften terror. Anticipation does not prevent harm. All right, so what do we do then? What are we supposed to do when we're constantly spinning, when we can't seem to find any solid ground. Like I said, when I have episodes of vertigo, my instinct was to close my eyes and scream. But the treatment that I was actually given by the doctors taught me something more counterintuitive and profound. The doctors and the therapist said, don't close your eyes. Don't look away. That'll preach, I said. What you ought to do is fix your gaze, find a focal point, and hold it long enough so that your brain does the work of reintegrating those pictures again, right? So when I'm lying on my bed and this is happening, I stare at the doorknob and then it goes away. You are supposed to keep your eyes open, don't close them, but you're still allowed to scream. Just keep your eyes open. We have a tremendous amount of collective vertigo going on right now. The Trump administration is doing everything in its power to keep things spinning. And this is where denial has the potential to enter our shared challenge, because we're trying to recognize and orient ourselves as to what the hell is going on. Jokingly, when we were doing rehearsal and it came time for me to hold the spot for my sermon, I go up and pretend to do my sermon for a little bit, and I said, what the actual amen. That would be my sermon, because that's what it feels like right now, right? And I'm not just talking about this spinning and this disorientation happening for those of us on the left side of the spectrum. I mean, there is a swath of denial and spinning and disorientation going on for everyone, except for those in power. And in this collective experience, denial isn't as simple as ignorance. In this case, denial isn't a moral failure. But what it is, it's kind of like when I have that vertigo, it's an exhausted nervous system seeking relief, right? Denial is what happens when we're holding multiple truths, painful truths, contradictory truths that become overwhelming. Camera 1, camera 2. And friends, the denial that we may hold is not merely our own personal need for relief. We're being fed a constant stream of denial from the administration, right? We know this. The denial we're being fed is social, it's political, and it's radicalized. Vivian reminded us this morning that racism doesn't survive because it's loud and explicit. It survives because it's denied, minimized, excused, distorted, and rewritten in ways that operate systematically. And when denial is systematic, it provokes violence and oppression and allows us to diminish not only the worth and dignity of others, but our own humanity at the same time. The danger of this kind of systematic denial in this country is not new, right? It's our foundation. It's always happened, and it's still happening. We have never lived in a country that did not deny the worth and dignity of large portions of its population based on race or gender, sexuality, ability, immigration, etc. We can now add political identity to that list, right? As liberals in the country are now being labeled as domestic terrorists or deranged for the viewpoints that we hold. For the viewpoints that we hold that are trying to stop harm against others, that are trying to defend against oppression and violence and state-sanctioned kidnapping. Renee Good and her wife were being vigilant neighbors, alongside many others who were filming, witnessing and protesting the presence of federal ICE agents sweeping through their streets, their neighborhoods, their schools, their businesses, in search of immigrants to kidnap. Her protest and presence were a threat to an oppressive system, and that they called for a change to what was going on. But she herself was not a physical threat to those she was speaking out against. We've all seen the videos. She was not a threat, and yet she was killed. And many of us were shocked. Shocked. And we can feel that. Again, this is holding multiple truths at one time, right? So we can hold that truth. But I also want to ask you, do you think that people of color and immigrants themselves were as shocked as some of us white folks were? That an innocent person was shot because of state-sanctioned violence. Do you think people of color and immigrants find that as shocking? Let me tell you, they are sympathetic and they are outraged, but they're not shocked because they live in the crosshairs. They know what's going on. They've always bled and died at the hands of a system which sought to oppress them and silence their experience and voices. So why should we be shocked? Why should we be in denial that this was going to happen? Why should we be in denial that a new Gestapo is raining terror on our streets and kidnapping people at will? I want to name these things: colonization, Gestapo, if you will. This is what is happening. There are currently more ICE agents and federal agents of that type in the Twin Cities than there are actual police officers in Minneapolis and St. Paul. There are thousands of ICE and federal agents there right now. They've been raiding Targets and Walmart stores, waiting for parents to drop their kids off at school, as they were the other day in South Minneapolis. They're going to restaurants and other places of business. They're raiding people's homes. They're armed and they're dangerous and they're backed by the Trump administration. Public schools in the Twin Cities closed this week because of these threats. Immigrants are hiding in their homes. Emily's cousin's brother-in-law, who is Mexican, has not gone to work all week. They've been texting all week. We're so afraid for him. We're so afraid for so many others. The governor, Tim Walz, who many of you know because he was on the national stage last year, has put the Minnesota National Guard on alert to possibly defend Minnesotans from their own federal government. And some say to put them on alert so that Trump can't call them in. Apparently that would be a conflict. There's no denying that this is happening. You know, we skirted right out of it last October here, right? The tech billionaires bailed us all out. It was supposed to happen here. Money talks with Trump, and so the tech bros called him and he didn't come here. But we can't deny that it's happening. We can't deny that it could happen here, tech bros or not. And then we're all at risk of falling into a denial that looks like saying, there's nothing we can do to stop this. And this is one of the most dangerous forms of denial because it sounds realistic. Who am I to be able to do something? It sounds resolved, maybe even mature, but it is not wisdom. It is disorientation, pretending to be acceptance. And that's how we're being asked by this administration to respond to armed ICE presence in our cities. This is how we're asked to respond to families living in fear. We're asked to respond by knowing that there's nothing we can do and this is the way that it's supposed to go. This is how we're asked to hear threats of domination, oppression, and colonization, not as violence, but as strategy and policy and leadership in this country. We're being asked to accept what's happening by the Trump administration as needed actions for the safety of this country. And we're being told if we don't agree, that we're deranged or terrorists. But our faith is very clear that it calls upon us to resist all of that. So, and I see y'all looking at me a little glum. Great, Laura, what do we do? What do we do? How do we keep our heads out of the sand, right? What is our focal point to keep things from spinning out of control? How do we engage when that voice of the denial in the back of our head says, I don't know if what I'm doing will matter. I don't know if it's enough. That voice that says the only thing we can do is vote them out. That's what we hear when we close our eyes to that spinning. But open your eyes and don't be afraid of the discomfort of not knowing. Don't be afraid. Step into your discomfort. It's a spiritual discipline, refusing to close our eyes when the world spins out of control. We have to learn to tolerate that discomfort. I'll tell you what, I did those eye things, and my vertigo episodes lessened and became more infrequent, and I hardly have them at all now. Occasionally I have times when I tell Emily I just feel a little oogie and a little off, like I feel like it could come on, but I've trained myself to look at the ways that I need to look so that it never starts going out of control for me. We have to tolerate the discomfort of integrating multiple viewpoints, of holding multiple truths at once. Holding multiple truths at once. We are shaped by racism even when we oppose it, right? Our culture is shaped by it even if we're against it. Suffering is real even when it isn't happening to us. That we're implicated even when we feel powerless. We have to face those truths. Resistance begins when we choose orientation over comfort. Orientation over certainty. So what should we do aside from raising our voices, going out onto the streets with Marion, banging some drums and making noise? What else can we do? What other focal points are there? Well, it's different for all of us, right? Some of us can afford to be generous and support legal organizations that is doing the hard work of helping immigrants right now. Others are generous in supporting basic needs for families around here. When ICE shows up, people have a hard time going to work or even dropping their kids off at school, right? So we need to be there and help them navigate those daily needs, however we can do that. And here's something else that I want to invite you all to do, that we must do, because I don't want to say with certainty, but I think it may happen here at some point, and I think some of you feel that way too. And so we need to learn to be vigilant. So, I have a gift for you. I'm going to pass these here. You go that way. And I'm going to pass these here. And you go that way. And I invite... Look, it seems like a simple thing, right? This little whistle. But do you know what they're doing on the streets of Minneapolis? They all have these whistles, and when they see ICE in their neighborhood, when they see ICE at Target, when they see ICE at the Walgreens, outside the church, outside the clinic, they start blowing these whistles, right? They sound the alarm that, hey, something is happening here that shouldn't be happening. And then they get out their phones and they film it. And here's all the advice that is given right now on this. You blow your whistle, you make noise, you say, hey, everybody else, pay attention, this terrible thing is happening here. And you record on your phone. Don't insert yourself in between ICE and the person. That is a very bad idea, and violence could and may very well happen. But film that. Film what's going on. And do you know why that's important? That's important because at some point, if that person is being kidnapped, we need to know who that person was to let their loved ones know. Your vigilance at that moment is not gawking. It's not sticking your nose in somebody else's business. It's simply being on the sidelines, witnessing what's going on, and then offering your videos to others that might be able to help make sense of what happened, that might be able to help contact the loved ones of that person who was taken and identify the person who was taken. We need to look out for one another, for all of our neighbors. My heart is so much in Minneapolis this week. I've witnessed the terror that's happening there over and over again, as many as you have, and I have wept and I have gnashed my teeth, and I have also witnessed the amazing collaboration and systems of mutual aid that have sprung up there every day by folks committed to center their communities of love over fear. And those of you that are on social media, I'm just going to give you a name, Ashley Horan. She has a title within the UUA, and you would have thought I wrote that down, but I didn't. But it's like Vice President of Social Justice, blah, 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 blah. She's a friend of mine. She's amazing. I worked with her at the Minnesota UU Social Justice Alliance when she was the executive there. Ashley Horan, Horan. She's documenting everything that's going on there on her Facebook page, and she's doing an amazing job of holding it all up. And Ashley is such an amazing minister. When she gives it to you, she's also giving it to you in such a pastoral way that we're all in this together. And to see the mutual aid that is springing up there, and it is springing up over and over and over. Because let me tell you this, the second they set up a mutual aid station of food to distribute to people, because there are people hiding in their homes and they need to get food to them, you know, as soon as they set up, whatever they set up, if it's out anywhere in public, like ICE comes and bulldozes it right down. And they keep setting it up, and they keep setting it up. They move it somewhere else, and they keep setting it up. And it sounds frustrating, and it's also very beautiful at the same time. Again, you're holding camera 1 and camera 2, right? And so that's what we need, is a focus of care. And we need to learn to be vigilant. And I'm going to plug something one more time, because Jack reminds us a lot every week about how this is our space for weekly reset, right? And this is. We come here for a weekly reset. I invite you all, come here, take a rest, come here, find comfort, fuel the fire within yourselves. But don't come here passively. Come here to engage, like with the social justice meeting today. And I want to plug those hospitality teams again, because here's the thing. That is a place where you practice stretching those muscles of radical mutual care. Right? They're ready to go. They're exercised. You've been doing little lifts with your carrying muscles by bringing donuts here, taking your turn. Ashley's been talking so much about that this week in the Twin Cities. Everybody needs to take their turn to create these communities of mutual aid and care. It's about practicing building community. It's about stretching the spiritual muscles that we need to create communities that are centered on mutual aid and safety for all. We need to do whatever we can to ready ourselves for that. And guess what? If it doesn't happen, if by some miracle it all would go away tomorrow, well, then we're still set to build communities of care, which is what we're aiming for anyway. Denial. Here's what we cannot deny anymore: that a better world can exist. We cannot deny anymore that we're going to have to give up some of our own comfort and certainty to get there. And we have to give up denying that we don't have the power to make that happen, because we do have the power to make that happen. So may we keep our eyes open, may we find our focal point, may we practice the kind of resistance that helps the world come into a more loving view for everyone, everywhere, every day. Amen. Just a reminder that the social justice meeting is in here at 12 o'clock. Look at y'all. One thing that you can practice in getting comfortable with being uncomfortable is the notion that the service is going to last exactly 60 minutes. May you have the courage to notice where denial whispers comfort, the wisdom to choose the path of love instead. When the world feels unsteady and the spinning begins, may you find a focus point, a face, a value, a promise of dignity that helps you regain your bearings. May you practice resistance, not only in moments of action, but in moments of attention, refusing to numb what asks to be felt. And if fear rises, if grief breaks through, if you need to cry or scream along the way, may you remember the steadiness. May you remember that steadiness does not require silence. Go in courage, go in clarity, go in love that keeps its eyes open. Amen.